This week, we return. We are back with the what year is Terror of Mechagodzilla?
1975.
We'll just do the whole thing again. All right. Music. Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we are back with the 1975 film Terror of Mechagodzilla. This is Castle of Horror episode 333. What a cool number. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be discussing it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castlebridge Media. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire, the immortally youthful... Say hello, Tony.
Oh, man, I wish that was true, but thank you. Hey, everybody. Howdy.
Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, currently published by Comixology. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
When you say it all together like that, it still sounds fancy.
It is. It's fancy. It's fancy. And you also are a youthful gentleman.
You're also fancy. Way fancier than, I think, definitely me. So
I am a bit of a dandy. I think that surprises people often when they meet me.
Drew, in my mind, Drew, you always wear a vest and and a pocket square and a tie and
that's actually what I have on right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I have a Salem Slot
I was
t-shirt
gonna
on.
say.
I'm kidding. I have a Salem Slot
Nobody's even
t-shirt
seeing
and Scooby-Doo pajamas.
Okay.
Drew, in my mind, you're always dressed like Edward Nygma, basically. I think of you as the Riddler with spiky hair. And finally...
The Riddler is one of my style icons.
Well, there we go. All right. Also in Denver, color commentary from the delightful and wonderful, and looking a lot like Catwoman from The Long Halloween, which apparently came out 1 billion years ago. We were discussing this beforehand. Color commentary from Joya Guzman.
After we got married.
Yeah, no kidding.
It came out around the time that Titanosaurus was born.
Yeah. Joya Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver, say hello.
I was thinking the 333 is a nice number, but when we have 666, I'm going to freak out because I'm super superstitious about that number. We'll have to figure out a good movie to do for that one. We've already done most of the 666 relevant movies, I think, but we'll find something.
There's always more Satan to unearth.
So let me see if I understand this. You're worried about what we will do when we are 333 episodes from now.
Yeah, we're at our halfway. We're at our halfway to 666 point.
You know what? If we really just worked at it, I bet you we could be that in 5 years.
There you go.
We could stop at 665. That could be just the way.
Yeah. Yeah, or just skip it. We could do like the buildings. Yeah, the buildings that don't have a 13th floor will just be we'll be at 6 and 7.
I would
and
hope.
Be like, wait a minute, what? Which one did you do that I missed?
I mean, we should just, frankly, when we get to 666, probably well earlier than that. There are a lot of movies we did early on that we could probably stand to do again and reassess. And I think The Omen is definitely one of those.
Sure.
Okay. But today it's not The Omen. It's Terror of Mechagodzilla, released in Japan as Mechagodzilla no Gyakushu, and it came out in 1975. It's a kaiju film. It's directed by Ishiro Honda. It has the original score writer, Ifukube, is back. This is the 15th. This kind of blows my mind, honestly. This is the 15th Godzilla movie, and it's 1974, which means Godzilla at this point has been running for 20 years. It is a direct sequel of Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, and it was the final film in this period, the Showa period. And I'm going to actually turn to Tony in just a second and ask him to explain what the Showa period means. But just very quickly, this movie came out in 1975 in Japan, and then had a limited release in the US in 1978. And in some places it was called Terror of Godzilla. And there is an almost just limitless confusion about the many, many versions that people have seen on TV and on disc and so forth. But this ends the Showa period. The movie didn't do as well as the previous ones, and so Toho decided to hang it up for about 10 years. So, and they came back with a new period called the Heisei period. So, Tony, I'm going to go to opening thoughts in a second, but what is Showa? What does that mean?
I mean, it basically it's kind of loaded, like without going too far. I mean, basically it denotes a time period, and there's different time periods within the time period. The whole thing was like 26 to 89, I think, is the definition. But it's basically, I think in the US we think of things as the 80s or the night, like those kinds of like, oh, that's so 80s or whatever. But you also have these different time periods, different demarcations in Japan. There's a lot.
So it's not specific to Godzilla. It's specific culturally to Japan. I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's a time period. It is a time demarcation of years.
Got it.
Okay. Then there's, modern Showa and there's a lot. Like, this is definitely you can really deep dive this, and it's complicated, but I think at the very base of it you can think of as a time period, and the demarcations of that and why and everything are complicated. There's a lot there to say, but yes, but you can think of it as this takes place during this time period, in the same way that the Heisei period denotes the next round of Godzilla, because those were filmed during that time period,
or at the very least, that's where they began.
Right.
It's like referring to the Avengers, comic book series by the year that the first one came out. So this is the one that began in the 60s, even if it went into the 90s. It's like this is the 60s one we're talking about, or volume 1. This is volume 1 of Godzilla, basically, that is wrapping up in this movie. All right. Let's get our opening thoughts, and Tony, I'm going to call on you to call again because you're the big Godzilla fan in my life. So let's go. Tony Julia Drew, who is a near second in Godzilla. I know that it's not a competition.
I feel like I'm glad that you said that, because I feel like every time we have this conversation, I have to be like, it's not a competition, Jason.
It's not a competition, but if we're watching a Jason movie, by gum, I'm going to turn to you first.
And that's fair. And I actually would say Tony probably is a little bigger of a Godzilla fan than I am. Like there's no shame in that. Like, that's not saying that I am not a real fan. Right. This isn't like a gatekeeper-y thing. It's like he's actually been to Japan, dude. I can't, bring that to the table.
All right. Well, I regret getting us into all that. Nevertheless, Tony, opening thoughts, Terror of Mechagodzilla.
Well, again, I hope nobody is too harsh on my very simplified version of Showa in the time period, but that's so it's,
and
it's
I didn't tell you I was going to ask you that, so I apologize for just slamming you with this rather esoteric question.
I really like this film. I think I liked it even more on this side. I hope that people understand where I'm coming from, but when I watched it this time, what I really the takeaway I had, and I've seen it a bunch, and luckily I have the Criterion set, so it looks fantastic on that set. I highly recommend if you can view any of those. And I think they released them on different platforms. I think maybe HBO Max has them, and they were on the Criterion channel as well. But however, if you can see those restored ones, that's my preferred way to see them because they look amazing. I think this is the most, to me, it felt more like a manga that got adapted, or it would easily be anime, like easily. Just the way that the way the plot goes, and the kind of daring do, as well as the aliens, how everything happens. I almost pictured it in this kind of manga way, which I hadn't before. But for some reason, this time, it really struck me that all of these things would make a great, if this wasn't already a movie, it would make a great manga. Or look, it would still look really cool animated. So I'm really psyched for Godzilla Singular Point. But I like this movie. I think it's got a lot of cool adventure stuff.
Yeah.
The monsters are great. There's a lot of monster wrestling in it, and that's cool. Cyborgs, aliens, monster wrestling spies, action scientists.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, what else can you pack into a Godzilla movie?
Right.
I think the people's main complaint would probably be maybe it takes a while to get to see before you see a Godzilla in it, but it's still got a lot of monster up until that point. So I don't know. There's some really great scenes we'll get into later, but I really enjoyed the movie.
Fantastic. Julia, what are your thoughts?
I was kind of mixed on it. It wasn't my favorite film of the ones we've done. With Godzilla, I liked the actual Godzilla. I like the actor who's in the suit. I think he's really funny, or she. I don't know. I'm assuming it's a he, but yeah. But he's really funny. He like the man. I say mannerisms. I don't obviously not really facial as much. Although the face is hilarious and cute too. But just the jumps and the hand motions and all of it. That was hysterical. I really enjoyed that part. I was not a fan of the Titanosaurus. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
I don't like the sound effect. It really grates on my nerves, the sound effect. And I just kind of found him like, I don't know. I wasn't really into that part. The Mechagodzilla is okay, but not as terrifying as the one that we saw, previously. And then the stories, the human stories, there were some really interesting things there. And I would have liked to have seen a little bit more, about, like, I actually really like the fact that the screenplay is written by a woman and that she was really, interested in making sure that whatever they did in the film, that they were, that they stayed true to the storyline about the female character, who's is a tech. What's her the character's name? I'm trying to find it here, but anyway, the girl that's the
cyborg girl. Yes.
Yeah. Well, because
Katsura.
I love. Yeah, Katsura, that's right. I love that's a huge shock that she's actually a cyborg, that she basically got RoboCopped. She was dead ish, and they brought her back by making her into basically RoboCop, but not like it's not obvious. So that whole story was fascinating to me. How they went about it. I would have liked to have seen more, particularly at the end, of like her having some kind of moral, like her emotions coming through, like with RoboCop. Her emotions coming through and actually overtaking the programming. I would have liked to have seen some of that. So I was kind of left a little bit unsatisfied at the end there. But yeah, really interesting story. And I thought that the gratuitous nudity was super stupid. And I just was really irritated by that, because I'm like, just cover her breasts. Who cares? I know they're not really her breasts, but it doesn't matter. But anyway, that was really dumb. It distracted me. But there was, so that was, I think, probably my favorite thing, even though, like I say, it left me unsatisfied at the end, but I thought it was a really interesting bit, a really interesting storyline. So I'm kind of, like I say, I have mixed feelings about it.
You're a lot of your interpretation tracks with what Rain was feeling as well. So I think there's something to that. I want to go back to the emotional part when we get to the end.
Yeah.
Because I think there's some stuff to that. But yeah, it's kind of funny. I think most of your stuff, I watched it with Rain, and it tracks really well with how she felt. And I love the design, by the way, of this Godzilla as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, me too. Yeah. Drew, what are your thoughts?
So this is first of all, it's the first Mechagodzilla movie that I saw. And it's one of the Godzilla movies we watched the most in my household, because my parents got a VHS tape of this from Walmart, and we actually watched it so much the tape eventually snapped from being watched so many times.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so I have, like, there's definitely a nostalgic lens that I bring for watching this movie, even though this movie, and first of all, Julia, we probably annoyed the hell out of my parents because we would run around the house imitating the Titanosaurus roar. I do love Titanosaurus, though. I think it's kind of funny, like, like he actually syncs up pretty well with a lot of current theories about Spinosaurus.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, he's kind of a weird dinosaur if we're to take him as a dinosaur, which is the movie absolutely wants you to. But there was also stuff about this movie that kind of disturbed me when I was a kid, like particularly the which it seems they seem positively quaint when I watched them as an adult, but like the surgery scenes when I was a kid, of them turning her into a cyborg and them like opening her up and working on her like she's a car or something like that stuff freaked me out when I was a kid, but it also continued to make me more fascinated by it. And it's so, I think it's because of that kind of stuff. There is a lot of weird tonal shifts from this movie, because like at one point, like this is like full on Godzilla is a superhero. Like there's actually some point where kids cry out for him like he's Superman, and like it's that late Showa period Godzilla vibe. And then but there's also like some of the darker stuff in this, like the stuff about with the cyborg, and then there's like some animal abuse stuff with the way that like Titanosaurus isn't responsible for his own what he's doing. He's being controlled, so it's kind of messed up. But interesting movie. You bring up that Godzilla's not in this very much. It's funny, like right now I see a lot of people online complaining that Godzilla was kind of the co-star and Godzilla versus Kong, but then we have this is like the Mechagodzilla and Titanosaurus show until like basically the last 20 minutes. And
and that's about how much Godzilla, and I've said it before, I timed it one time, and that's about how much Godzilla is in a lot of movies. I think there's a couple movies it's like 15 minutes like tops. When I was timing it unscientifically while I was freelancing one time, because people were griping about a previous Godzilla movie. Like, I'm going to time this. And found out that, in fact, I think 30 minutes max is the amount of Godzilla that's in any Godzilla movie up until a point. So, yeah. It's just funny seeing that, and there's just a lot of plot and a lot of cool.
It's got a lot of James Bond type stuff.
And that's why I felt like it also felt very manga to me in the way it tells the action scientist / spy stuff.
In fact, and that's my whole opening thought, is that I love how they just go for it with all the craziness in the plot. If you think of this movie in comparison to Godzilla versus Kong, which we just watched, I would much rather watch this story of the scientists tempted by aliens to turn against humanity because they are extorting him and holding the life of his cyborg daughter over him. Way more interesting than the guy with the podcast. No disrespect to people with podcasts, but I mean, seriously.
I hate to break this to you, Jason.
Yes. And are we supposed to, for a moment, believe that the guy with the podcast being able to break into all that stuff is somehow more believable than this scientist and his cyborg daughter? And do I seriously care in a movie with giant monsters? It's so silly.
I hate to break it to you, but there are people who believe podcasters over scientists, sadly.
Well, okay, then we should take our responsibility very seriously.
Exactly.
we should take that seriously. But I also wanted to say, the funny thing is, if you think of it, Tony, that thing about Godzilla shows up at the end, basically, it's like going to one of these movies. They have a rhythm, and it's like they're a sort of very stylized, ritualized sort of event or play, and all this stuff has to happen, and people have to do stuff, and plot has to happen, and minor characters, and then the main character comes on at the end. And I'm not saying that's how you do any play. It's certainly not how you do, most plays that we watch, but it certainly is the way these things work. And so, I know there's cost associated with having Godzilla around and stuff, but I think a lot of it is this is just the way it goes. You've got to have all the drama and the running around and bad guys and sunglasses and everything, and then Godzilla comes in and beats up on some monsters. Gosh, where to start? Let's start with we may as well go backwards. I would like to start with Godzilla himself. Godzilla here, and if you spend some time on Godzilla Wiki, I think it's godzilla.fandom.wiki, they go really deep into the difference between the different Godzilla suits. This Godzilla was around for like 3 movies. He was in the previous, he was in Gigan, he was in Mechagodzilla, and then he was in this. And, he's one of the really cute, Godzilla in the Showa period, he comes up, the actor in this case is named Toru Kawai. The actor is doing it always, they sell it a lot, but Godzilla is friendly, he has big eyes, so he's kind of like a lovable brute, and when he comes up running, he's got his fists up like he's gonna fight. Go ahead.
One thing about this, all three of those movies is Godzilla's also able to mug for the camera a lot more with this design, and they have him do that, and
I love that so much.
And with Gigan, where he breaks his arms and like pushes him around and stuff, like all of that stuff is golden.
Well, and the boxing, like he's just a legit boxer.
Well, that's
I love
actually what Rain didn't
the
like.
Ground at this one part, and he actually like dusts himself off. Like
Rain said she preferred the more it's an animal kind of fighting.
But
I have to say I enjoy both, and I really I'm still going to use the terms, the monster wrestling stuff just is fun, and that's and I like that. I think it's cool, and for a long time there was also a lot of like, hey, well, the reason it ended, with this was because there was too much of that. It was too much humanistic, like, oh, Godzilla became a joke, and is he friends to kids, and lost the edge. When in reality, there were a lot of reasons for that, and almost none of them were actually like Godzilla's no longer scary anymore. But that was the prevailing thought for a long time amongst a lot of fandom. I don't know, like I think there's a lot of cool sci-fi stuff where they're swinging for the fences in this movie, and
I just wanted to do a quick correction.
Ideas from these though, like that's the thing, like they've updated them, but like the idea, if there's like another big monster that's like going to start terrorizing, and Godzilla's going to come up out of the sea and put that monster in its place.
Exactly.
That's essentially what they're still doing. And like it's just like a presentation choice, because like what you're talking about is essentially the argument against the Adam West Batman show, and how that's not really Batman. You hear people say that like oh, that's not really Batman, and I'm like, sorry, that's some po-faced bullshit. Adam West Batman still does most everything that you want Batman to do, and in some cases like he does more actual like detective work than a lot of the Christian Bale ever did, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, you can just as well come out of those and go, you might enjoy this Christian Bale stuff, but to me, this is not Batman. This is a weird ninja thing with a helmet. By the way, I got to correct what I said. I said something wrong. It wasn't Gigan. It was Megalon Mechagodzilla and Terror of Mechagodzilla. 73, 74, 75. That's the suit. This suit is called Megarogoji, and each of the suits has a name. If you want to get into this, each suit has a name, and this one is Megarogoji. And
I always feel like this one looks like they taped back the ears of like a Dalmatian or something.
Yeah, he looks like a puppy dog. I love puppy dog Godzilla. It makes me happy. I had a toy Godzilla when I was a kid that, like, for some reason, shot off his fists. So I guess he was a robot.
Oh, that was the Shogun Warriors one. It had a tongue that came out and everything.
Flicking tongue. Yeah, and he looked like this.
No, to your credit, Jason, Megalon is in the Godzilla versus Megalon has a lot of monsters. So Gigan is in it. So
I don't know why
that's where Jet Jaguar's in that too. Oh, I love Jet Jaguar.
I love it. And the thing is,
I think you can love this stuff and still love like Shin Godzilla or the legendary stuff or Godzilla 1985, like the stuff that is more tonally serious.
I loved the heck out of Shin Godzilla. I mean, to me, I thought that was a fabulous movie. Why do you think, I'm going to ask a question. I don't even know exactly how to ask the question. I'm going to try this anyway. Like, I know that it is inherently silly to have a story about aliens who are trying to steal resources for their planet, and they're disguised as people, and they're making giant robots, and they got cyborg women, and and they're holding scientists hostage. That's all nonsense. And I feel like in our culture today that the only people who can pull off nonsense like that I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe is doing it. I think they're able to just have nonsense.
They eased it. They eased into it though. Like Iron Man didn't start out like that. I think it's like
it's a good point.
They got up to Black Panther and they were like, fuck it, let's do cyborg rhinos.
Right.
If people don't like it.
Well, also we had Guardians of the Galaxy leading into that too, so we kind of edged into that.
Yeah.
You're right. I guess it takes time. You gotta get there.
But Godzilla didn't start out like this either. Godzilla started out as a black and white, very serious, scary movie.
And is it more silly than Independence Day? I don't really think so.
I guess not.
I mean, it may not look as polished, but is a cyborg woman with gears and a scientist who has to make a moral choice to turn on his planet because of how it's treated him, is that any worse than plugging a Macintosh into an Independence Day?
No, so right.
Okay.
So right.
About the scientists though, I have some big. This is when watching this as an adult, I'm always like, he's a scientist that made a claim that he had discovered a giant dinosaur living underwater by this island in a world
that has
with Godzilla,
exactly,
King Kong, and Ghidorah, and Rodan, and Mothra, and all these other
and Megalon and Manga.
Megalon. For some reason, they were like, "Oh no, this giant aquatic fishosaurus thing." Like,
I found that super absurd. Also,
that was like it's when he's like, "Well, I never could tell." I think so. I agree with you, but I also think looking at the very dramatic where they're like holding him down and having to restrain him. There's all these photos of like when he was disgraced, and it's there's physical.
Yeah, he seems to have gone bonkers. It's not just his water. It's his water, dragon. It's also that he seems to be like throwing things.
I think that the one guy who's like, dinosaur, that was crazy. I think what we're also seeing though at the same time, and I didn't notice until this time, the big deal is all of his, I can control all the animal stuff. Yeah. And they're like, no, we don't do that. But there is a guy who's basically goes, dinosaurs, and you're like, where do you live, my dude? Like, you live in a world of previously you're talking about, like, somebody's talking like, remember all of these monsters that attack, and that guy for some reason is like, man, that guy was such a crackpot. Underwater dinosaurs.
It always reminds me though of certain things you have to assume about the world of like Hammer films, like such that people just make bad decisions when they get close to the vampire's castle, like terrible decisions. And I have to believe that there's basically some sort of spell that is there's a ray.
Just like when Dracula looks at you, suddenly you're willing to do whatever he says. So it's not even a stupid ray. It's like,
so grow your hair out and a mustache and go full mad scientist.
Yeah, for sure. I also thought it was super interesting looking at Godzilla here, and I was thinking about how, if the original 1954 Godzilla, we've said 1,000 times, this is what every pedantic asshole wants to bring you back to, is like, remember, it was originally about the trauma of atomic. True, and I think the fact that Ishiro Honda, the one director, comes back and gets from there to here, it seems to be that trauma can make you into a monster, and trauma can make you into a hero. I think if anything, that's what Godzilla is that he's an expression of how trauma can manifest itself in so many different and sometimes wonderful ways. And maybe I'm saying maybe that's nonsense, but I think there's something to it. It's the only way I can reconcile it in my mind.
What it represents becomes different. Right?
Yeah.
Like especially like, come on, let's also call it like it is. as it becomes a franchise,
yes,
you have it morphs itself. Like once you're making toys and things, that changes things. And we've dealt with that in superhero shows. But Godzilla comes to represent a different thing than it initially was. The savior part of it becomes, these things are attacking. We need a defender. This thing that was once against us is now for us for various reasons. And again, it's the big part is to make a fun movie that people are going to come and buy
totally
tickets to,
true,
right?
totally true.
But how it's changed over this time is also over 2 decades. The perception of what a thing is changes, of course. And so heck, we've just seen it with over the past few decades. What is a Captain America, right? How does that change? What's the landscape of that? And in our superhero across the board, what is a Batman, right?
Well,
I think that all changes, and I think you can choose to go along with it, or you can go, man, that's just not. There's a bunch of musicians I like their early stuff, and then I didn't like their later stuff. You're along for the ride, or maybe you're not.
I want to explore all that stuff, especially with we don't have to dig into Captain America and Batman. I wish that we could, but we would diverge for half an hour. But what's interesting is Captain America, Batman, and Godzilla. There are so many ways that you can interpret it, and somebody sitting in the audience watching it can come out and go, see, that Godzilla stands for what I stand for. It teaches the lessons that whatever they are, that Batman.
I like this world where somebody goes, that Godzilla stands for where I stand for. I don't know what that is, but I like. You
want to know that guy?
I like what they're thinking. I used to there was a time period of Godzilla where I said, well, one thing that's nice about Godzilla is he doesn't have to worry about anything. Anything in his way, he just kind of gets to stomp it.
Right.
And
as long as it's not a monster, in which case that can really hurt him.
Right, of course. But there's a comfort in sometimes you want to be a Godzilla because that's how life is treating you at the time, right? So boy, I like the idea of this. I like what this particular Godzilla stands for.
Tony, imagine if they had a bar that we could go to, and if you don't drink, you just get a Shirley Temple, but you got this bar, and you have a set that you can just stomp.
I wanted to do. And somebody would probably do this now. It's still my idea. I wanted to if I had money to invest in it, I wanted to do a birthday party experience where you basically just bring a balsa wood set, set it up, and that's the birthday party.
That's brilliant.
Experience.
Love it.
See, if you could 3D print it in something that would be crunchy, like balsa wood.
Yeah. Well, I had a friend who could do it laser
over
print.
Again.
Who could laser wood, the balsa wood. But that takes a lot of time, and I have to do that. There's liability insurance and stuff like that. But I really wanted
splinters. Yes.
There's also a really great 30 Rock episode where Tracy Morgan's quote unquote son starts a restaurant called Staples, but in Staples it's monster Godzilla comes out. That's one of my favorite episodes, but.
That sounds great.
That happens at a restaurant, which is great. But yeah, I really wanted to thing we bring the monsters and monster suits to you, and then you get to stomp a city.
I love that idea. I don't even need the monster suit. I just want to stomp around the city and knock it down. Sure. That sounds great. That sounds wonderful. I mean, forget trampolines. I want to do that. There is in one crazy summer, for reasons that I don't remember, there is a really funny scene where a guy's in a Godzilla suit, and then somehow it all lines up perfectly.
Yeah. Again, how that touches on how popular everything Godzilla is. That you had, hey, we're gonna put Bobcat Goldthwait in a Godzilla suit, and he's gonna mimic. Now, part of it was the mimicry that you're ooh, I don't know, it doesn't maybe work as well. But of course, as a kid, I love that scene. Right? How could you not? There's
probably some cultural insensitivity to that scene. I have to go back and look at it, but I
remember.
No doubt that that's the case. Yeah, but okay. So I don't know if we think of anything else to discuss about Godzilla.
Well, I think we should. It would be good to start the start, and we get a submarine again. One thing that Julia's talking about. Hey, some people don't believe. They believe podcasts instead of science. we can go through and go, hey, look, scientists are the heroes.
Yes.
And villains, of course, but scientists are some of the heroes in here. Where we get an experimental sub who is going out looking. They're actually looking for Mechagodzilla parts, because they're going to salvage them, right?
To do something.
And there's continuity between these.
Right. Yeah. They also, if nothing else, they want to get the space titanium out of it, because it can't just be a new thing. It's space titanium.
Remind me, if you would, was Mechagodzilla? Please forgive me that I've forgotten. But was Mechagodzilla in the previous movie made by aliens, and are they the same aliens that are in this movie?
Yeah, it's of the same people, more or less.
Okay.
Like they left out his cool shield. Like his spinny head shield and stuff. I really like this colors. Crazy pot-bellied. I like that somebody built a Mechagodzilla and they were like, he's kind of paunchy though. Like, he's not a svelte character. And part of that is by nature of how you have to move in this. Like, it's functional. But I like his build. I also think it's hilarious that his has tow missiles, because I don't know where tow missiles go, but it's pretty funny. Like, but also his feet are missiles. I
also have to assume that his missiles that are in his fingers and his toes, there must be some conveyor system inside the ship, the robot, that is constantly feeding missiles.
Oh yeah. Down. There's all of that stuff. He can fly. Also, as we see in the clip before, they don't really do it again, but in that previous one, Godzilla gained the power of he magnetized himself.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Which
how fortunate
that was
fascinating
for him.
Really that's the thing. There's all the stuff you don't come back to. Like, he used that, and then for whatever reason, being stuck with those missiles, and that at that time he was able to magnetize himself. But then, so we have all the investigations going on with them trying to figure out what happened to the sub, which leads to trying to track down the scientist who's actually they think is dead, who's actually still alive, and barging into his daughter's house, which is not so great. Right. Very pushy. But luckily, we in addition to a biologist, we have marine biologist, we have an Interpol agent.
Yes,
who's gonna be our cool James Bond guy.
Yeah, and he is. He looks like a character straight out of a manga or an anime of the 80s for sure. With the white jacket and the square hair, and I love all this stuff.
He's the very mid to late 70s action hero guy. Yeah. And he plays it well. He's it also shows that although our scientist is pretty competent, he still kind of needs gun handling secret agents to get him out of trouble. But he's really like all the stuff later on where he gets out of it is pretty cool. But so they eventually find out that yes, in fact, there is a Titanosaurus, and we cut to our aliens who love to laugh do villainous things and laugh about it
and execute their workers who make mistakes.
What's even crazier about that scene? I wanted to kind of move to that.
Okay, if you want to keep going in order, that's good. That's cool.
Well, what's crazy about that scene is the aliens are so sadistic, and their commander is so sadistic. He knows he's going to execute his people who have failed because they basically are supposed to kill or dissuade any more research, because their main plot revolves around taking over the Earth and basically restructuring, especially Tokyo. They're going to make it into a model city. The Tokyo of today is too chaotic, and humans are terrible.
Right.
But what I love about that guy and his sadism is he has a whip. So he whips these guys mercilessly and then goes, oh, I don't think whipping is enough. You're going to die. It wasn't just enough to kill them. It wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't enough to kill them. He has to whip them too, because man, what a crummy boss. It's the worst.
Yes. Yeah. I don't actually get a good sense for the organization of the aliens. There does seem to be one sort of director who wears badass sunglasses and looks sort of like a douchebag businessman, and he laughs a lot. And then there's his main helper, who is a sort of evil goateed guy.
They all kind of fit. It's funny that it's all three of these movies together, because they all kind of fit with, the bad guys in Megalon, right, are all kind of cut from the same cloth. So the through line of the villains works pretty well if you watch these all three together. This makes a great.
That's true. That's total. I'm glad you said that, because so now it's like it's a number of years that they've been doing this, and your aliens are always these like fairly slick suit-wearing guys in sunglasses, and that's how you kind of recognize them, is that they are bad dudes in sunglasses who have gadgets and guns and yeah, all the stuff, and ridiculously complicated plans for taking over the Earth that involve building these usually large robots and stuff.
So in this case, they're going to control Titanosaurus and raise everything to the ground and threaten people until they go, because they're not. It doesn't seem like they're going to wipe out humanity, but they're definitely going to subjugate them and make them build New Tokyo, which is going to be way better and way more circular.
Yes,
Lots
that's
of
right.
Concentric rings that are going to make everything a much better Tokyo.
Yeah, they have
and
sort
then
of a
they're going to
blueprint
eventually
that they
do that.
went on,
New York would be circular, and DC and LA as well. I'm sure eventually.
They never really explain why they want to invade Earth, though. They're just
no, because
their planet sucks.
Their
There's
dying.
something wrong. Yeah, they need a planet.
The black hole planet 3 is dying, and so they're.
I thought it was so funny that they kept referring to it that way. Like, it doesn't have a name; it's just Black Hole Planet 3.
Right.
That cracked me up every single
foolish
time.
users and their fancy names.
Yeah, they don't need it called Earth. They don't have this superstition. They're literally third Black Hole Planet 3. That's where we live.
Yeah.
Until we don't, because we want to need to move to the Earth.
I guess you're right. Yeah.
There is like something very. You talk about like manga, and I totally see that, but there's also very much something of like Silver Age Marvel comic books.
Sure.
Yeah,
like,
well, that's
easily
why
could be the plot of like a Fantastic Four comic book.
Absolutely.
And that's what, like, I know this is a sci-fi movie, and we should be saying like, oh, it's a sci-fi movie, but the way how it all works feels like a comic book adaptation to me, more so than when I saw it before. This is just this new impression I had thinking back on it this time. The way the aliens, the reveals, the beats of it feel that way, and that I found fascinating. So they're really excited to both to control Mechagodzilla, get him back up and running, because he was, torn apart pretty badly. So enough that our, mad scientist here, when he sees Mechagodzilla, goes, "Whoa, basically you rebuilt him. That's impressive."
Yes,
and they, these guys go pretty much, well, yeah, I mean.
Right.
If we have a Titanosaurus, we need to back that up with a Mechagodzilla, because when we have those two, because Mechagodzilla is Godzilla's sworn enemy now. Is their other point? So
I loved that.
Yeah, who's really
Mechagodzilla's greatest enemy?
Exactly.
Yes.
Godzilla.
So once he's tired out. Once he's tuckered out with Titanosaurus, their plot is to basically just put him through enough trials that
which is again kind of what they did in Godzilla versus Kong. Like they're still recycling this stuff. It's like, let's have Godzilla fight this one monster and wear him out, and then we're gonna stick a Mechagodzilla on him.
Yes.
And I gotta say, when it eventually gets to that, Mechagodzilla really puts the hurt on Godzilla. There's a reason why they're these rivals, and these guys built a pretty formidable device, considering that not much has ever touched a Godzilla until you get to 80. I mean, Oxygen Destroyer, of course, but as far as vehicles go, 85 Godzilla gets hurt by the Super X because they get smart about it. Taking down his nuclear reactor, basically. But in general, planes and tanks definitely don't do it. Masers sometimes, but usually it's a monster. So the fact that these aliens have built a Godzilla-destroying device, potentially...
and if you're going after Earth, you need something like that because they have Godzilla.
Exactly.
In other words, in a world that Godzilla exists in, then you need to figure out, like, what are you going to do?
What's cool though about Godzilla and the Mechagodzilla rivalry here though is that Godzilla is taking, like, he's all on it. Like most of the time that in a movie like this, they would have teamed him up with like Rodan or Anguirus or Mothra.
Yeah.
He'd have like monster backup, but he's taking on Titanosaurus and Mechagodzilla. He's got some support. He's basically got military and scientific support from humans,
right?
But as far as like the actual, like, I'm getting in fisticuffs with this giant robot and
where are those other robots?
giant-
I mean, where there's other monsters? Like
he's doing it all on his own, and it's kind of unlike a lot of things. Like Godzilla kind of seems like the underdog here. Like he gets his ass beat a couple. There's that really awesome part where like Titanosaurus is basically doing river dance on top of him. Like,
well, they bury him. Like
that made
they
me
literally
so sad, though. I hated that.
But it's crazy.
It's the way these things have to work in a sports movie, in a especially in a fight movie.
I know all this lost.
The fighter has to, like, you really think, oh, Rocky's not going to get up.
He's dead.
He's not.
Yeah, we have an ongoing joke in our house where it's like, oh, this is the one where the main character dies, whoever it is that we know cannot ever die. It's like, oh, this is where Godzilla dies. Oh well.
Yeah,
every time.
Exactly. Yeah. What I was super impressed by as a young person, and I still am when I think about it, that this vision that the creators of this have, that, well, if you're going to have a giant robot Godzilla, you have to build a garage, and you have to have like elevators that go up and down.
I thought they did a nice job with that effect, because that was a tough effect, and they managed to pull it off with all the projection screens where people would walk through doors, toward projection screens, and that kind of thing. I thought that was really nicely done.
Well, also one thing I like about this one that again goes back to just the sci-fi part. There's a whole other section where they're trying to discover where the base is. Like there's the whole spy part is, we have a guy who happens to see a worker who's escaped, and that worker has had experiments done on him because he does all these crazy leaps and jumps.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And that's how they discover, hey, well, there's that guy left some space titanium around because some guy was working on the sewer system at that area.
Yeah.
And so there's all the tracking down. And then once they figure out, because without the humans in this doing all their research, Godzilla might have lost, because once they figure out, oh, this is how, we get these notes.
You're right.
There's all the investigation and all the notes on how to control Titanosaurus and is it real? And then the real dichotomy of, our scientists falling in love with the cyborg. And her going back and forth between, no, I can't, humans suck and my dad's right, and I owe it to the aliens for bringing me back. There's a certain there's a control aspect to her.
Yeah.
She kind of mirrors Titanosaurus, and also they eventually put the controller for Mechagodzilla in her.
Yeah.
So it all centers around this, who's controlling whom and how that's all playing out.
Yeah, this is one of the few without that, what they call in the spy business humans, all that activity of humans running around and affecting stuff, without them actually doing stuff to make it to finally weaken Mechagodzilla, because for various reasons the bipedal controller
and I don't want to make it sound like I'm ragging people on people who've only seen the modern Godzilla movies, but you hear people ragging on, like, if a monster, like, oh, Godzilla had to get help from the military, and Godzilla, when he fought Ghidorah, oh, Kong had to get help from
good point,
to do this, and yet again, they're already doing this stuff. Like it's like it's baked into the because you have to get, like, if you're gonna have humans in these movies, you have to give them something to do that actually affects the monster side of things.
And there's they have a countdown aspect to it, because once there's more spy stuff, we also have, hey, we have this thing, we're going to use it against Titanosaurus, and we're going to block the control mechanism. Oh, somebody sabotaged that. That kind of stuff.
That's why I really feel like it was a wasted opportunity not having the daughter just decide to not to sabotage, to go against her programming, because that would have been a great way for the humans to actually intervene and assist Godzilla, is if she suddenly shuts down Mechagodzilla. Like, just, I don't know. I didn't get why that.
Well, doesn't she? I mean, when she kills herself, doesn't she essentially?
I mean, that is how because she's partially be controlled. Now, something I noticed it previously, but it really hit home this time. I don't know if it really, I'd have to dig deeper and try to find a screenplay or something. But one thing I always wondered about is right when she dies originally. So they're going to control Titanosaurus. They turn on the mechanism. She gets electrocuted. Immediately, the alien guys swoop in.
That's true.
And they've been around. So I always kind of wondered if they sort of planned it so that they could really have hand over her dad.
Gosh, I never thought about it.
Because they immediately, like, they don't, it's not... I mean, it's a flashback, so time is nebulous, right?
Yeah.
But if we're to believe the timeline as shown to us, it really does seem like, yeah, go get her, right? And turn her into a cyborg because they save her. But given how the commander guy will beat his own people and then execute them, I kind of wonder if they didn't sort of plan that so that they could have leverage over her mad scientist dad.
I have to ask, when the good scientist and the Interpol agent who have worked together at the university previously, they address one another as a sensei and senpai, and they're running around together. They go to the mansion, fairly dilapidated mansion. First of all, did you like totally get a vibe off of? Do you remember like we watched the Dracula movies, the Japanese Dracula films? This struck me as very similar to that. You know, like I'm going to go into the woods to this like creepy old house, and here's the person who answers the door has given me a story that I instantly don't really believe very much. I loved all of that. When she comes to the door and she says, "Oh, my father is dead and I live here alone," I'm thinking, is she a ghost? I mean, I really thought she was a ghost for a second. I knew this wasn't a horror movie, so it wasn't likely to happen. But there are such odd folkloric elements of this crumbling mansion and the single female who just sort of haunts its halls, and she's a robot being controlled by aliens. It's amazing.
Ichinose, I think, is a great, like, I love his scientist stuff, and Jiro, the Interpol agent, is like I like their camaraderie as well.
Oh, totally.
Like they each have respect for what the other one's trying to do. But Akira Ichinose isn't just like, oh, I'm a scientist and that's it. Like, when he gets captured, he's trying to break out. He's trying to, they're trying to free people. Like, they work really well. I mean, and it kind of also mirrors
people out with these aliens. They're sadistic. They're like slitting people's throats so they won't talk.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Well, oh yeah. Well, they slit their throats. They've taken out their tongues. But it also mirrors the scientist and action star. Kind of thing that's in Megalon.
Yeah, that's right.
Because
that's totally right.
Scientist who builds. It's different, but that kind of camaraderie comes forward in this movie as well. And I
wish I knew about this building. By the way, the building that represents the mansion of the Doctor. I'd like to know what this is. Like whether it's really a private home or whether it's like some old school or
it looked like a school or university of some sort.
Yes, it sure did. Yeah, and it did kind of look run down, but that could be set dressing, so it's hard to say.
By the way, another just great character actor is their kind of butler kind of guy, servant. He looks like that, but then he's also there anytime to make sure she doesn't get out of line.
Yes,
and to enforce that. But he's pretty bizarre and mean, but I really like that character actor. Like, I love his mannerisms and just how he kind of, when he needs to be tough. But he's perfect because, oh, look, it's an old man, he's kind of nondescript in that way. But he's part of all the sabotage plans and everything. So
I can find nothing on the filming locations of Terror of Mechagodzilla, which, so it goes.
I'm sure it's out there.
If anybody can tell us, if you're still listening, if anybody can tell us where this mansion is, I want to go to there. Is I guess what I'm saying.
Right. But they're also they're willing to blow up their base to try to take people out. And it's also interesting too because they have their base, which is where they launch a Mechagodzilla and such. But they also can easily move to the house.
That's right.
Have a setup and I just there's so many cool super villain bits to it.
Yes,
that's pretty awesome.
Right. The alien. I love the idea that the aliens basically the alien setup is they have the big underground base which you can access through a tunnel that comes from a cave. The mansion is more or less near there and seems to be connected to it through underground tunnels and stuff. Yeah, no, the aliens are doing well as far as like hiding all of this stuff. Yeah. What haven't we talked about?
Well, going back to the human part too, it is really interesting that, and it's kind of, Titanosaurus is also kind of tragic. At no point is he really in control of what he is doing.
Well, when Titanosaurus
when
attacks the submarine at the beginning, that's just Titanosaurus, I guess, being a grumpy.
No, I mean they don't want.
Was he being controlled then?
Yeah, because they were on the path to try to find Mechagodzilla part.
I guess you're right.
And they were getting too close. So,
although if you're trying to cover your track, maybe don't use a 5-story.
Yeah.
Well, there is that. There's a fair amount of hubris to these aliens. Let's be real.
He's a great monster. I do. Joya doesn't like the sound that it makes, but I really like the Titanosaurus design.
Even when the humans are attacking to try to disrupt him, there's a part where they're hurting him as well, because he's like, his brain hurts basically. And at that point too, any destruction that Godzilla is doing to him, even though it's warranted, is also just extra gratuitous, because Titanosaurus is already hurting from everything the aliens and the humans are doing to him. Although also too, I really, really just love the shot of Titanosaurus rompa-stomping and Mechagodzilla slowly flying behind him, just like that.
There are some great shots,
and I love this movie. Definitely does not believe in the laws of physics, because it's super weird when they're just completely perpendicular, even though they're not being supported by anything.
Oh yes, like
I want to know how the hell Mechagodzilla is able to fly.
No, it's
that thing would weigh so much.
There is nothing aerodynamic, or barely anything aerodynamic, about that Mechagodzilla especially. But I just love that scene. You'll see X amount of people who kind of still go, oh, I can see the strings on this, or that's a miniature. But I don't care. I think that's just such a great setup of Titanosaurus and their smoke and destruction, and Mechagodzilla's just taking his sweet ass time, slowly flying through the air, and it's ominous in a way too. I love that scene every time it comes on.
There are some shots of Mechagodzilla tearing up the city, where he's just standing there amidst the burning buildings. It looks great. It looks so cool. And by the way, one thing I love about the storytelling in this visually is the camera, to show us what the monsters are doing, hangs well above the shoulders of the monsters, which was one of my big complaints about a lot of other movies, is that although I understand what they're trying to do, keep the camera down all the time at a low level, and it gets confusing because the monsters are too big. This one, the camera's practically in space.
They use a lot of the shots you might use in an Ultraman, or any of the Sentai stuff, where they shoot really low to give you that look how big this thing is. But that's not the trick they use every time, and I think they use it pretty judiciously overall. When they need to show, look, and he's the sky is back there, and
yes,
I think they break it up really nicely.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's fair. There are plenty of shots that are low, so you can show that they are in fact giant monsters. But a lot of times, if they're showing the city, Mechagodzilla is down there, and we're kind of way up above Mechagodzilla, and watching what he's doing, which is pretty cool. I love this stuff. Yes. What haven't we touched on? And I apologize. I'm not trying to move us along. I just want to make sure that I don't forget anything.
No, I mean, I think we move straight from there, and then it's humans. There. Oh, it is kind of cool that there's two kind of simultaneous plot points, and again, that's why it feels very spy movie. There's the let's free all the people, let's attack the bad guys, and the choices that have to be made as far as hey, I'm a cyborg, Katsura is a cyborg,
I love her character.
Who knows that she is controlling Mechagodzilla, and
I wanted to save her. I wanted them to do some sort of quick surgery and remove the Mechagodzilla controller so that she could, but instead she sacrifices herself by shooting herself.
Well, that's
And she's a cyborg.
That's the sort of stuff that I'm like talking about when I say that like there is some varying tones in here, because like sometimes it's very fanciful and kid friendly. Like again, there's literally a part where these two kids call out for Godzilla like he's Superman, and Godzilla shows up to rescue them from Titanosaurus.
That's true.
Whereas, you know, with, you know, then you have the stuff like this, you know, where you know, she has to die. Like there's a sacrificial thing, and you know, you have like Godzilla actually like straight up myrtleizing the aliens with his atomic breath when they try to make their escape. You know, there's like this darker quality to some of the parts of it that is interesting to me. That it kind of yo-yos back and forth, because normally with this era of Godzilla, either you have like the, you know, Godzilla raids again, you know, like the early incarnation of Godzilla, or you have, you know, what it's become, and what Megalon is, and you know, this kind of has both tones at the same time, and that's interesting to me.
Yeah, and I get where Julia is coming from earlier, but I also think there is actually a lot of kind of gravity and pathos to how she, you know, this guy says, "I don't care, you're a cyborg, I love you." It hasn't been much time, so you know, it's a little bit of infatuation, but still, you know, we can believe this. This is a
in the universe
epic
of the movie, sure. Yeah.
But her choice to kill herself, her choices of whether or not she could betray her father, and how she sees, you know, for years she's gone, yeah, I mean, the world turned on us, I'm totally cool, Dad, and of course the aliens saved me. But there's been a certain amount of there's a certain aspect to how he kind of controlled her, as well as the aliens kind of hanging that over his head. I thought her death and how she reacted was actually really effective, and showed, you know, remorse, and you know, was really dramatic. So I thought there was a lot of tragedy and drama in that.
Yeah, no, there is. It's just that I feel like it kind of went from, okay, I just do whatever they program me to do, to, oh, no, I'm not going to anymore, I'm going to kill myself. And I would have liked to have seen more of a struggle when, because like even, and same thing with the scientist, when he's starting to go, oh crap, we're gonna, you know, that maybe I'm not so much on board with this, but he still is like, yeah, go Titanosaurus or whatever. I just kind of think that they both were like, okay, we're fully invested in this plan right now, and then suddenly, oh, now we're not, or maybe we weren't a second ago, but now we are. I didn't ever get that there was like this internal torture. It just kind of felt like, now I'm done with this, and I'm gonna shoot myself. But I don't know. I just feel like they could have done a little bit more with it, but obviously that's not.
But I guarantee you, if this were an ongoing comic, like if you just had a comic continue on from here, like 2001, the comic, and from DC, or then she would come back. I would bring this character back.
Sure. Well,
like,
especially
you know,
if they
because she's a robot, you can fix her.
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess we're supposed to think that she damaged herself in a way that also the aliens leave, and they're the only ones who can really fix her.
That's true.
So we're led to believe. Now, what would happen in a comic is just she stays on ice until, you know, I don't know if it's Marvel, like Tony Stark discovers a way he can now, you know, build her back, or whoever, AIM, or, you know, however that goes. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're left, is, you know, nobody else could really fix her at this point. You know, even her scientist dad is gone by this time. But also, you know, part of the part of the aliens' downfall is their hubris in thinking like, humans can't possibly defeat us. Yeah. And we're always going to win against the Godzilla because we made a Mechagodzilla and a Titanosaurus. They didn't really count on being, you know, nuclear fired at the end.
Right.
Because they're ready to head out. I mean, without Godzilla, it's this, you know, there's this duality, because without the humans, he might have been defeated by Titanosaurus, or at least the combo of Titanosaurus and Mechagodzilla.
Yeah.
But without the, you know, and also with the, you know, her killing herself, he might have been defeated.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, don't forget, he got straight up buried alive. earlier, which is crazy. Like, and jumped on by
right.
but
They're dancing on his grave.
Exactly.
Yes.
But then the aliens would get away, except Godzilla says, "Nah, I don't think that's happening today. We've had enough. We've had 2 movies full of you." And
he just roasts them. It's true.
It blows them all 3 up at the same. That's it, and then goes into the sequel.
Yeah.
Once again, and that's his swan song, until 10 years later, or 9 years technically, but
though with a different continuity. So
sure,
this is the swan song for the original Godzilla original flavor,
right?
Yeah, was the continuity like one of the continuities, and I think it's the Millennium continuity. They have mostly reboot, where each one is a standalone continuity.
Yeah, that's the Millennium.
Which was an interesting theory. They've been around long enough that they can try all these different things. I have to say, and this is probably just because of my own generation, to me, this is the series that I believe that the culture thinks of when they think of Godzilla. But that, I don't know if that's actually true. But I sort of feel like the cultural phenomenon of Godzilla is heavily influenced by the way that these originals were presented.
It's a bit like Doctor Who, though. I think it's whatever Godzilla is your first Godzilla.
Yeah. Mm. And I also think that this is again, we can go with the Batman analogy. I think for a lot of people, the previous, the Adam West Batman, for example, might be what pushed it into there's just Batman everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bat, you name it. Bat shark repellent, all that stuff. Just bat lunchboxes, everything, right? So there's that pushed it into the era we have now. But I think that's just what lays the groundwork for all of it. So this may not be anymore, this isn't your dad's or your grandpa's Godzilla, right?
Yeah.
But this is what is in the collective consciousness that lays the groundwork. And then from there, it's whatever, without Tom Baker Doctor Who, for example, on all of our TVs, we might not, future generations may or may not have. Right, had the popularity that led to the popularity, which allowed for that was on PBS, that was on RTV.
Yeah,
right. The international phenomena of that may or may not go anywhere without Tom Baker on giving it an international popularity.
Yeah.
However, that's not what people now remember.
Right.
But it lays that foundation down. And I think that's important. I think this era of kind of goofiness is where we would get a, Godzilla versus Charles Barkley or any of that, because that's what people think of as, that's monster wrestling. So without that, we may not get eventual international, the international appeal of it. But, only, again, we're talking from this generation who saw these as a kid, right?
Yeah.
So some people, their Godzilla is going to be, some people, their Godzilla may be 2014 Godzilla.
Yeah, it's very.
Well, I think
there's
definitely a chunk of the fan base now that their entryway into it.
Sure.
And, I talk to people that who are younger than me that absolutely love the reviled TriStar Godzilla because that was their entryway into the fandom.
We had an interesting discussion. Not to go back to it too much, but the woman who co-directed the Death Battle episode that I co-directed, one of her favorites. I say woman, she's just younger than me, but respectfully, she just said, she loved it, and I was like, I'm not going to argue. Like, if you love it, who am I to tell you that that's not valid? It's like, but I love that one. I was like, I don't like that one as much.
Yeah.
But if in fact, there's a couple. She wanted to crib some scenes because she loved that one, and I was like, go for it. She's like, oh man, people don't like this. I'm worried. I'm like, no, it's gonna show. Like, if you're passionate about that, do those things. There's a shot that's directly actually from that. That's in that.
I like,
and I was all about that. I think I told her, like, if that's not my Godzilla, that doesn't mean that has to be. You have to think differently. By no means. I don't personally enjoy that one for a variety of reasons. But I certainly, first she felt really self-conscious about it. I was like, no, like. If you love it, because that also that passion, again, that's going to show. So if you're passionate about about that. Like, do the thing you're passionate about and put that in your art, and that's gonna shine through. It can't not. And we kind of came to this, like, we both were coming from different eras, and I think that's made, I don't know, I mean, the episode did well. I mean, there's plenty of Death Battles who have done way better as far as YouTube views, etc. But we kind of melded into this, like, hey, we just love Godzilla, let's just do this. And I think, that speaks directly to what we're talking about. Like, her Godzilla was that, and she loved all the other stuff, but it showed through. And I thought that was really kind of cool.
I hope, there's been a couple of times I've like checked people on Twitter who probably are people who their entryway to Godzilla is the legendary movies. And if you listen to this podcast, I have a degree of enjoyment of those movies. So it's I'm not being critical. It's just remarking in it. So I hope I'm not being like gatekeepery, because I remember when the 2016 Ghostbusters came out and having have conversations with people at cons about like, hey, don't ridicule people who are getting into this fan base because of this movie, because that's their entryway, and whatever somebody's entryway is to something, be it Adam West Batman or 2014 Godzilla or 2016 Ghostbuster, something's going to be someone's first exposure to something, and if it's something that they carry with them, they're going to start to dig deeper, there's like so many people I know who were introduced to Doctor Who through the modern incarnation, and they went back and started watching the old stuff. And I there's something to be said to that. Like I think that fan bases should have more of a big tent approach.
Yeah, I agree.
That makes any sense.
The only time it makes me a little sad is if people go, "Oh, I can't watch the old Godzillas because they're too cheesy."
Well, I was,
and that's Tony, fine. And I again, like, I'm not the gatekeeper. If you think that, like, I'm not here to convince you otherwise. But I think, especially like we're talking about all the kind of cool spy stuff and sci-fi, and like this one is kind of hilariously cheesy, and certainly Megalon with its monster wrestling and Jet Jaguar, and there's Godzilla dances and Monster Zero, like all of that stuff. I get. In the same way with, like, I prefer the Nolan Batman because Adam West one is too cheesy for me. I get where people come from, but again, I'm going to go back to, I think there's some stuff there that you may write off.
Yeah.
If that's all you think of it as. I still think there's some really great stuff. But again, I mean, we have X amount of time on the earth, right? Who am I to tell you how to spend your time? I just feel like when people write it off, if it's something you love, I do feel like it's worth checking it all out. But I don't know,
I do have one caveat about this. I absolutely positively will never play the Injustice games or read any of the spin-off material, because that is I'm not going to go off on people who enjoy it or tell them that they're an asshole or anything, like what you like. But that really just isn't Superman to me. And that's not anything I would ever look for in a Superman story.
Yeah, I didn't. The Injustice games weren't my bag. And I know they're big in, like, the fighting game,
people love them.
And, just in, like...
And people really seem to like the spin-off comics because they're successful.
Sure.
And if that's what speaks to you, that's fine. But that is really one of the few things where I like, because I'm into seeing different incarnations of things.
Right.
Like, I like seeing things reinterpreted, but like, I just like, 10, 20 years ago, like around the first time they did, like the Justice Lords on the Justice League cartoon, I was a little bit more open to like, oh, let's do this DC superheroes, but they're evil. Let's do Superman, but he's evil. And I've kind of just come around. I was like, okay, we've done that. It's tired. I just want a good Superman story about the regular Superman. Like, you don't need all this like edgelord stuff. And I don't want to turn this into the Superman podcast, because Lord knows I've been rewatching Superman the animated series. So I've been talking about Superman a lot on Twitter, but I am throwing out that is like one of the few things that like it if you want, but I'm not going to engage on it.
A way to bring that back to here is that I think certain stories are exceptions, and then people get kind of hung up on them, and they become the rule. But I want to get back to something that Tony said about, he's worried that, and I think he's worried about, and I think it's totally true, that there will be people who are like, listen, I've come up on the legendary stuff. I really can't sit through these things. They're too slow for me. They're too antiquated. And that's exactly like running into somebody who just they can't watch black and white. They can't understand it. It doesn't work on their eyes.
And that's okay.
And I have to say, and it's totally okay. In other words, basically, look, as we walk down the hall and we gather people around us, we say, hey, we're going to a screening room at the back of this hall, and we're going to watch some, there's going to be less and less people who are going to follow, and that's okay, because and the ones who make it in are going to be fun to hang out with, and that's all right. Well, we should definitely get our final thoughts on Terror of Mechagodzilla. I do want to say one last thing about the aliens, is I love their costumes. I love their crazy helmets.
Oh,
and I love that in the flashbacks, they have different costumes, meaning that in the continuity of this movie, they have gone through costume redesigns where they were like, let's do purple with hats. Wait, no, let's do silver helmets with spikes, and that
is pretty funny.
The aliens are very busy.
Very much like anticipating new wave.
Right.
Fashion forward.
Yeah,
exactly.
So, all right. The way we did it was Tony, Julia, Drew, and then I'll go. So, final thoughts. Tony, I know we've gone all over the place, but Terror of Mechagodzilla, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I still really enjoy it. As evidenced by some of my comments, I found some new things this time around that I hadn't really noticed previously. I think it's a good time every time. I think that there's, I love the spy stuff. I would see, I would love to see more spies and scientists. It's like, our love of Gatchaman. Like, I think the world currently needs more science ninjas.
Yes.
Just more science, less not science.
Right.
And I love, everybody comes together to defeat Titanosaurus, but it takes a Godzilla to kind of really solve everything and fight the aliens. I think there's a lot of cool stuff going on the ground that isn't just, hey, let's talk about a newspaper. And there's even like cool newspaper stuff, which is, kind of a staple in all of this. Investigative journalism and all of that leading. I love all of that. It's interesting that this is the final Showa Godzilla, but they had 15 movies is a pretty good run, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
We should be so lucky that we could make that many things. And I think it works. I like the score. I like that it builds directly off the previous movie. And I think, again, like we said, there's enough similarity now that I've watched this all, that if you wanted to watch these three movies together with the same Godzilla suit, it makes a great triple feature because it's really fun and has interesting sci-fi stuff. So I dig it.
Fantastic. And by the way, I've got to put the link for that suit on our site because it is fabulous. Julia, what are your final thoughts?
I got a kick out of it, but I don't feel like I'm going to remember it, honestly, like in a year. I'll be like, wait, which one was that? Because there's just, it's just kind of, there are a couple things that I'll be like, oh, right. This was really interesting with the cyborg girl or whatever. But, but it is amusing. And like I say, I did enjoy the Godzilla performance. I think it's great that he comes in at the end and is like to save the day kind of. I think that worked out just fine. So, I don't really have much else to say, I don't think, but it's been an interesting conversation.
Thank you. Drew, what about you?
Again, this is just a nostalgic favorite out of the Godzilla series for me. Like, it's probably, I don't think it's the best Mechagodzilla movie, but it's probably my favorite for rewatching. Like, I just get a lot of enjoyment out of it. It makes me think of simpler times, and it's just always fun for me to revisit this movie. So like I enjoyed it, especially over I got my second COVID shot and I haven't been feeling very great for the last several days. Today's probably the best I felt, but like I've been watching a lot of movies, and to kind of cap it off with this one was like a good it was a good feeling. I really got some enjoyment out of that.
That's really great. I have very much enjoyed this, and I enjoyed talking about what it all means, and our deviations into conversations about reimagining these pop culture heroes and people rejecting them and also embracing them. I loved all that stuff. So this was cool, and it's considering that it was enjoyable, this was a good ending to this period of Godzilla. And I wish, though, I would totally read a manga series that just continues this continuity. I would be totally down with that. I would love that. I want to see more Jet Jaguar, and I want to see more of this particular Mechagodzilla, and I want to see that robot girl come back. So Katsura.
Well, we will get some various bits of all of this in the Godzilla Singular Point that's coming out. So we'll see how that goes.
What's Godzilla Singular Point?
It's the new animated show.
Huh.
The new anime that's coming out. Actually, some friends of mine worked on various bits of it. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the reel yet, but yeah, that's some friends.
I like the Godzilla design. I know that's kind of a controversial thing to say. A lot of people aren't into it, but because there's always this, you have some Godzilla designs that are where he's kind of cat-like, and then this one where he's kind of dog-like, and then there's the Millennium Godzilla, which I call the werewolf Godzilla. The Singular Point Godzilla kind of looks like a boar in the face, and I think that's kind of cool. Yeah, so even though he's a dinosaur, there's still this mammalian quality in there, which I always think is kind of cool.
It also has the weirdest initial Jet Jaguar.
Yeah,
it looks like he's gonna change, but that first Jet Jaguar is gonna be pretty crazy to look at first.
And when is it? Is it already out or?
It's Netflix, and I can't remember the release date.
It's out in Japan because they get the cool stuff first when it comes to Godzilla.
Okay, all right, but Netflix
and Matt
was a producer,
Frank has
so
seen it because he is more Godzilla than Tony and I combined.
I'll be darned.
I mean, I didn't contact my friends to get that, but yeah, I mean, it's also no joke that Matt, I thought I knew Godzilla, and then I talked to Matt and went, you know what? Never mind. I thought I knew.
We're not worthy.
And for years in my circle of friends, it was like, oh, Godzilla. Yes, we get it, Tony. Godzilla, it's your favorite. But Matt is on a different level, and he has to be because he makes cool comics and has to be in that zone to make those comics. But
I envy how he has taken what he loves and he has turned it into his career. And that's what I think that's the dream right there. He has taken his love of Godzilla and monsters and Sentai stuff and all that things, and he's channeled it with this laser focus into what his career has become, and that's just awesome. The only other person that I've seen do that with such focus is Nicola Scott, who was like, I remember back in the day she was just like, I'm going to draw Wonder Woman. And it's just everything was building to her drawing Wonder Woman, and then she did. And
that's wonderful.
I have tremendous respect for people who are able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still struggling to if I could be a full-time musician. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I am. I had a friend today who I remember I was at a gig or at a show. We were all at the same show, and he was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, being a tattoo artist. And I knew he was a good artist. And today he got, posted, hey, I'm working at this tattoo shop. But seeing, going from that, I'm going to do this to actually doing it. And I thought he could because he's a cool guy and he's a good artist. But I love it to hear when people go, I wanted to do this, and then I just did it. It's, especially when it's good people. And friends who are cool. So I can't say enough good things. It really warms my heart when somebody goes for it and does it. And Matt is one of the coolest people about that, and also very genuine. And I'm with you. He took it and just turned it into something really pretty amazing. And that's super cool.
Amazing. So let's do endorsements. Whatever you are watching, listening to, want to share with the world. Tony, what do you have for us?
I'm trying to think. Oh, I did see something that's really cool. 36 Cinema, which I think I've talked about several times, where they show martial arts movies with live commentary. Some of the best ones have been Dan Halstead, who found a bunch of, he turned his passion into that. He, found a huge stockpile of movies while tracking down trailers. He found a huge stockpile of martial arts movies in a theater and rescued them, and that's why we have some of the prints we have. But him and RZA did another commentary this past weekend for a movie called Heroes of the East, and I don't think I had seen all of it, but wow, it's just cool. The initial setup, it starts, it's almost like during the commentary, RZA pointed out, it's almost could be like a Cary Grant kind of movie. Guy from China, has an arranged marriage with this girl from Japan, which doesn't happen a lot. And she ends up being this awesome martial artist, but Japanese martial arts. And she is a force of nature, which ends up through a bunch of stuff. It ends up being Chinese martial arts versus Japanese martial arts. But the way it's filmed and everything is really cool. I don't know if they put some of the older ones on VOD. I'm not sure if they're going to do that, but Heroes of the East is really worth checking out. And if I'm going to go on martial arts, our guy, Katsumasa Uchida, who plays Jiro, the Interpol agent, is also in one of my all-time favorite martial arts movies that happens to be from Japan, which I watch a lot of stuff from Hong Kong and China, called Shogun's Ninja, which also has Sonny Chiba, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Sonny Chiba's in it, but he's not the main guy, but it has a crazy 80s score. Shogun's Ninja is just great. It's a little harder to find it on widescreen, like subtitled, but definitely, and it was one I had to search for years because I could only remember bits, because it's got like burrowing ninjas and tree ninjas and flying ninjas, a girl with like these Dayglow nunchucks. That's what I remembered. So trying to find those keywords in the early internet days was tough. Also made tougher because I was always looking for movies like Shaw Brothers movies, but this is one. It's from Japan. And so if you want to see our Interpol agent as a cool martial artist, Shogun's Ninja is there. And then also we were talking about things that people like and crossovers. Coming this week is something interesting. I work on the show Ruby, and that's one of the shows I work on, but there's Ruby Justice League. Crossover is coming out.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
Print issue goes on sale tomorrow. So at the time that this comes out, kind of neat that there's a crossover comic. Definitely, now that we're in the Warner Brothers, realm, these are things that happen. So it's really cool designs too. It looks really good. I haven't read it. It's one of those things, like, I know it's happening, but I don't always get the inside look, right? When it's being worked on.
Wow.
But it looks really cool, and there's cool stuff going on. So by the time people are listening to this, you can pick that up if that's something that you dig. I thought it was an interesting combo. That's pretty neat.
Very cool. Thank you for letting me know. I'm interested in that. Cool. Julia, what about you? Anything to endorse?
I don't really have anything. My parents were in town, have been in town over this weekend, and then we got our second shot last week, so that was exciting. And just kind of been busy with. I did watch the finale of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which was awesome. But I think actually the last episode wasn't as good as some of the others, but it was really exciting. So I don't really I can't think of anything new that I took in over the last week.
Fair.
So I'm gonna pass.
No worries. Drew, what about you?
Quite a few things. Three things exactly. First of all, I've been laid up, so I've been taking in a lot of media, and some stuff is not great, and some stuff is just okay, and some stuff is really interesting. Hulu has a new true crime documentary, true crime / cryptozoology, because it's a kind of at the intersection of that, where they have this this documentarian named I believe David Rittenhouse or something like that. I'm probably giving the wrong name, but he's done all these crazy things. Like he did an expose where he went undercover with like neo-Nazis. He's been undercover with like gangs. He's done all these like crazy things. And yet he had this one story from when he worked on weed farms, marijuana farms in Northern California in the 90s. That this one thing that he could never get out of his head, where late one night they're all like in this cabin out like up in the mountains, like in the middle of nowhere. And these two guys kind of come into the cabin they're staying in, like yelling at their boss about how there were 3 guys that they came across in one of the fields that had been killed by Bigfoot and like torn to pieces by Bigfoot. And he said, he it's always stayed with him, but he never looked into it. So this is like him going back and kind of looking into this story. But it's so it's a murder investigation, but it's also a look into like how the folklore of Bigfoot and this culture of marijuana growers, like how they interact with each other and intersect with each other. And, then there's, of course, the larger question of like, why do we need monsters in our culture? And, what
was it called, you said?
It's just called Sasquatch. And,
so that's David Holthouse. Is his
David Holthouse, yeah. I have heard from some people that were disappointed that it wasn't like a purely cryptozoology themed documentary, but there's like hundreds of those. Like we didn't need another In Search of. Like that already exists, and they certainly spend a decent amount of time with that kind of thing. But this was a novel approach to like Bigfoot lore that I just thought was really interesting. Speaking of reinventing old lore, the other thing that I took in over the last few days that I was really impressed with is Barbara Crampton's of Reanimator fame has a new movie out. It's a vampire movie called Jacob's Wife, which is about a minister's wife who gets bitten by a vampire. And one of the things that I love about it is, like we were talking a lot about how like reinventing things and stuff like that. And I thought a lot while watching this movie about all the different things that Dracula has been used as a metaphor for. And in this case, even though the vampire is played by Bonnie Aarons, who is famous for being the nun in the Conjuring series, but even though she's not strictly speaking Dracula, she's very informed by Dracula. And by that, I mean, like, she looks kind of like Nosferatu. She has like a Bela Lugosi cape on, like she's very much like an old movie vampire in this modern movie. And that in and of itself was very refreshing, because like we don't really see this kind of vampire anymore unless it's played as a joke. Whereas like they let her be scary. She's, played as a figure of fear. And I just love that. But, they've taken this Dracula vibe, this sort of Hammer horror vibe, but they use it as a way of like looking at a marriage that has gone stagnant. And it's no accident that her husband's a minister, so that can like play into like the whole religiosity of vampire lore. And this is like one of the best vampire movies I've seen in probably a decade.
I've heard that it's very good, and Barbara Crampton's a producer on that.
She is. And she felt very strongly about the script, and I can see why, because it's a great part for her. And I love the interpretation of vampires. I love that. It's not a movie that's afraid to wear its influences on its sleeve, but it's still just all the performances. Larry Fassenden, who plays her husband, even. Like they're just also multidimensional and cool. Like even the lead vampire, like could have just been a stock character, but Bonnie Aarons like it embodies her with like a lot of personality. And I don't know, man. Like Jason, I do think you would really like it. Like I've
been looking forward to seeing it. I haven't seen it yet. I've been wanting to interview Barbara Crampton, and I just haven't had a chance to do it yet.
Well, she liked my post about.
Ask her if she wants to do an interview. if she'll listen to
I'll have to
you,
work up some nerve for that. You deal with a lot less.
you can do the interview. I mean, I don't. I'm not over eager to do it myself. I would love to, but my point is, I would love to have her on the show.
Well, I'll see if I can work my magic. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
I mean, she's super cool. She always responds to our friends, the Monster Movie Happy Hour. So
if anybody has access, see if she'd be interested in doing an interview. She doesn't have to, but she might.
Well, she's super rad. Like all of her interactions are like on Twitter. Are just she's super cool.
Yeah,
awesome person all the way around.
Oh, she should be very proud of this movie. Like it's just top notch. Finally, I just got to keep saying I am crowdfunding right now. I'm doing a crossover with the indie comic Aerobicide and my character Lucy Chaplin. Why am I doing that? In part because it's fun to make comics, but two, the big reason I am raising proceeds to cover Aerobicide's creator, Terry Parr, one of my oldest friends, his medical bills from COVID-19. So if you even if you don't, you just like the podcast, but you don't give a shit about comic books, but you're like, I want to help that guy out because Drew is obviously very passionate about that. Like, we have perks as low as $1. And you can just go and show your support, and every little bit counts, especially at this point in the crowdfund, because like when you do crowdfunding, the thing that you this is like my third go around with the whole thing, and what you see is like there's that initial few weeks of excitement, and then things start to die down. You have to start fighting a lot more to get your funding and get people's attention, and that's kind of where we're at now. So I'm like really putting out like the, bat signal here. Like, we need your help. We need you to spread the word. We need you to back it. This isn't just about making a comic book. This is about helping somebody, and you can help somebody. And COVID-19, biggest fight of our generation. So here's something that you can do in a small way to help out with that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Hey, I didn't want to horn in too much.
Go ahead, Tony.
I didn't want to horn in too much, but Drew, if you get a chance, the Bigfoot thing you were talking about reminded me a little bit of a much more parody, much more tongue-in-cheek thing that I think would make a good pairing if you can find it. I saw it at Chattanooga Film Festival last year. It's called The Vice Guide to Bigfoot. But the way, like, you have to see it, and I don't want to reveal anything, but like when you're talking about that, it reminded me, there's a lot of parody of both how Vice does their documentaries as well as what, the Bigfoot part of it. I thought it was pretty fun. It may not be, your mileage may vary on it, but I think if you've watched that, if you can find The Vice Guide to Bigfoot, I think you'll see where I'm coming from. But I just had flashbacks that I was like, oh, yeah, you should see that. So.
Fair enough.
Very cool. All right. Well, this was actually a lot of fun. What are we watching next week? Do we know?
Mighty Joe Young.
Mighty Joe Young. Oh, I'm excited about that one too. What we've been doing, in case it's not abundantly clear, is we've been just, seesawing back and forth between Godzilla-related stuff and King Kong-related stuff.
Oh, is that what's been happening?
Yeah, so I cannot wait to do Mighty Joe Young. I think that sounds like super fun. So, all right, everyone, be excellent to one another. Come on to the Facebook page. Let us know what you thought.
I have a question. When you say be excellent to one another, are you consciously thinking about
Bill and Ted?
Bill and Ted?
Or is it just something you do?
No, of course you are.
No, I'm not. No. I
always assumed you were. I thought you just liked that line.
There is nothing Valley Boy about me. So
I thought it was a fun line.
It seems kind of out of character, but yet something you say almost every.
But it truly means a lot to me that people choose kindness. That's mainly.
Well, then there is a little bit of Bill and Ted within you.
Yeah, it may well be. It may well be. So yeah. All right, outstanding.
There's a little bit of Bill and Ted in all of us.
And I intend
not in Donald Trump. There's no wild stallion in that man.
I intend to watch High Seas hopefully in the next week, and I can let you guys know how that goes. It's a Spanish mystery show on a cruise liner, which apparently is super good. So
yeah, my dad recommended it.
Yeah. So
all right, good night, you guys.
All right, thanks everybody. Night.